Hyun woke up to the sound of screaming metal and alarms that made his head hurt. The transport ship shook so hard that his teeth rattled. He grabbed the armrest of his seat and held on tight. Around him, people were crying and praying. Some were silent, their faces white with fear. The lights went out, then came back on, then went out again. When the ship hit the ground, Hyun felt like a giant hand had slapped him into his seat. Everything went black. He opened his eyes to smoke and sparks. His head hurt. His arm hurt. Everything hurt. Hyun tried to stand up but fell back down. The floor was tilted at a strange angle. He could hear people moaning and calling for help. "Is anyone alive?" Hyun called out. His voice sounded weak even to himself. "Help me," someone answered. It was a woman's voice. "I can't move my leg." Hyun crawled toward the voice. The emergency lights gave off a red glow that made everything look like a nightmare. He found a young woman trapped under a piece of the ceiling. Her face was covered in blood. "Hold on," Hyun said. "I'll get you out." He pulled at the metal panel. It was heavy and his hands were shaking. Finally, it moved enough for the woman to pull her leg free. She cried out in pain but managed to stand up with his help. "I'm Minji," she said through tears. "Hyun," he replied. "Can you walk?" She nodded, but he could see she was lying. He put her arm around his shoulder and helped her move toward the exit. Other people were starting to wake up now. Some were helping others. Some just sat and stared at nothing. The cargo bay door had been ripped open. Hyun and Minji stumbled outside and stopped. They both stared at what they saw. The world was glowing. Trees that looked nothing like Earth trees surrounded them. They were tall and thin with leaves that gave off a soft blue light. The sky was purple with 2 moons hanging above them. The air smelled sweet but wrong, like flowers mixed with metal. "Where are we?" Minji whispered. Hyun had no answer. He helped her sit down on a piece of the broken ship. More survivors were coming out now. He counted them as they appeared. 10, 20, 30. The number grew slowly. Too slowly. An older man with gray hair came out supporting a younger guy who looked barely out of high school. The older man had blood on his shirt but seemed steady on his feet. "I'm Dae," the older man said. "I was a teacher back home. This is Junho. I think his arm is broken." "Minji," the young woman said. She looked at Junho's arm and winced. "I was studying medicine. Let me see it." While Minji checked Junho's arm, more people gathered. A woman in her 30s with short hair introduced herself as Yuna. A man in his 40s wearing a chef's uniform said his name was Bora. They all looked lost and scared. Hyun realized everyone was looking at him, waiting for him to say something, to do something. He had been a convenience store manager. He sold snacks and checked inventory. He had no idea what to do when a ship crashed on an alien planet. "We need to count who made it," Hyun said. His voice shook, but he kept talking. "And we need to find the emergency supplies. Does anyone know where they would be?" Hyunyo raised his good hand. "The supply pods are supposed to eject automatically when a ship crashes. They should be around here somewhere." "Good," Hyun said. "Yuna, Bora, can you two look for them? Stay close to the ship. Don't go far." They nodded and walked off. Hyun felt a small surge of relief. At least they listened to him. Dae was looking up at the sky. "Those moons are too big and too close. The gravity here feels heavier than Earth, and this forest. Nothing looks right." "Nothing is right," said a tall man walking out of the ship. He wore an expensive suit that was now torn and dirty. "We crashed on an unknown planet. The crew is dead, and we're stuck here with no way to call for help." "Who are you?" Hyun asked. "Taemin," the man said. "I was the executive liaison for the colony project. And I'm telling you all right now, our only chance is to stay with the ship and wait for rescue. They'll come looking for us." Hyun wanted to believe that, but something in his gut told him they couldn't just sit and wait. By the time the purple sky started to get darker, they had counted 47 survivors. 47 people out of 200. Hyun felt sick thinking about all the others still inside the ship. Minji had tried to go back in to look for more survivors, but the smoke was too thick. Yuna and Bora had found 3 supply pods. They contained food rations, water filters, medical supplies, and some basic tools. It was better than nothing, but Hyun knew it wouldn't last long. "We should move everything into the cargo bay," Hyun suggested. "Make a shelter there for tonight." "Why are we listening to a store clerk?" Taemin asked loudly. Several people turned to look. "I have management experience with actual corporations. I should be making decisions here." Hyun felt his face get hot. Taemin was right. Hyun had no real qualifications. He just sold people cigarettes and instant noodles. But someone had to do something. Then what do you suggest? Hyun asked. Taemin opened his mouth, but before he could speak, a sound came from the forest. It was like nothing Hyun had ever heard. A clicking noise mixed with a deep rumble. It made his bones vibrate. Everyone went silent. They all turned toward the glowing trees. Something moved between the blue lights. Something big. Hyun could see 6 legs and a body that looked like it was made of glass or crystal. The creature was as big as a car. Its eyes glowed red in the darkness. "Get inside," Hyun said quietly. "Everyone get inside now." For once, Taemin didn't argue. They all ran for the cargo bay. Bora and Junho grabbed the supply pods and dragged them inside. Hyun helped Minji, who was still limping badly. Dae made sure everyone was moving. They got inside just as 3 more creatures emerged from the forest. The things made that clicking, rumbling sound again. It was louder now. More of them were answering from different directions. Yuna found a piece of metal and wedged it against the broken door. It wouldn't stop the creatures if they really wanted in, but it made everyone feel a little safer. They huddled together in the darkness of the cargo bay. Outside, they could hear the creatures moving around the ship, sniffing, scratching at the metal walls. Hyun sat next to Minji, who was shaking. Dae was nearby with his arm around Junho. Bora and Yuna sat close together. Even Taemin looked scared now, his earlier confidence gone. "What are we going to do?" Someone whispered. Hyun didn't know. He was just a guy who used to worry about keeping the store clean and making sure the register balanced at the end of his shift. Now he was on an alien world with monsters outside and people looking to him for answers. But he knew one thing. They had survived the crash. They had made it through the first day, and tomorrow they would figure out the next step. "We survive," Hyun said into the darkness. "That's what we do. We survive." Outside, the creatures howled at the alien moons, and the blue forest glowed like a dream that had turned into a nightmare. The first week was the hardest. Every morning, Hyun woke up hoping the nightmare was over. Every morning, he opened his eyes to the purple sky and knew it wasn't. The survivors had turned the cargo bay into a living space. It was cramped and smelled bad, but it was safer than being outside with those crystal creatures. They called them glassbacks because of the way their shells looked. The glassbacks came every night circling the ship, making their terrible clicking sounds. Dae spent most of his time studying everything he could find. He collected plants from near the ship. He watched insects that looked like flying ribbons. He wrote notes on pieces of paper he found in the cargo bay. "This is important," Dae said one morning. He held up a purple plant with orange spots. "I tested this on some of the ship's bacteria cultures. It killed them all. These plants are poison to Earth life. So we can't eat anything here?" Bora asked. He had been trying to figure out how to make the food rations last longer. They had maybe 3 months of food. After that, nothing. "I didn't say that," Dae smiled a little. "I said they're poison as they are. But maybe we can change them. Make them safe." Hyun didn't understand the science, but he trusted Dae. The older man reminded him of his high school teacher who always said every problem had a solution if you looked at it the right way. Minji was running the medical area. Her leg was better now, mostly healed. She had learned to work with what little supplies they had. Yesterday, a man named Kwan had cut his hand badly on a piece of sharp metal. Minji had cleaned it with boiled water and closed the wound using a needle and thread from the emergency kit. Kwan was okay now. "I never finished medical school," Minji told Hyun one day. "I quit after 2 years. And now I'm doing surgery with sewing thread." "You're doing good," Hyun said. "Everyone trusts you." "They shouldn't," Minji laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "I'm just guessing most of the time." Hyun understood that feeling. He was guessing too. Every day was just trying to solve the next problem without thinking too far ahead. Thinking ahead made his chest feel tight and his breathing hard. Junho turned out to be good with machines. His broken arm was healing slowly, but he could still work. He took apart pieces of the ship and put them back together in new ways. He got the solar panels working, which meant they had power for lights and the water filter. "I dropped out of engineering school," Junho told Hyun. "I wasn't good enough to pass the tests." "You're good enough for this," Hyun said, watching Junho connect wires to a battery pack. Yuna surprised everyone. She spent hours watching the glassbacks from a safe spot near a window. She made drawings of how they moved and hunted. She noticed patterns. "They always come from the east side first," Yuna explained to the group one night. "And they circle 3 times before they leave. They're testing us, looking for weakness. How do you know that? Taemin asked. He still argued with most of Hyun's decisions, but he had stopped trying to take over. I used to play strategy games professionally, Yuna said. You learn to see patterns. These creatures are like AI in a game. They follow rules. Her observations helped. They set up noisemakers on the east side to scare the glassbacks away before they got too close. It worked most nights. The real trouble started in the second week. They found a stream about 100 meters from the ship. The water looked clean and Day tested it. He said it was safe to drink after boiling. But the stream was home to something else. Bora had gone to collect water with 3 other people. Hyun heard the screaming from inside the ship. He ran outside with Yuna and Junho following. At the stream, Bora and the others were running back. Something was chasing them. It looked like a snake but with 4 fins and a mouthful of teeth that glowed in the dark water. The thing was fast, jumping out of the stream and snapping at their legs. Move! Yuna shouted. She grabbed a piece of pipe and swung it at the creature. She hit it hard on the head. The creature made a shrieking sound and dove back into the water. Everyone made it back to the ship. One man had a bite on his leg, but Minji cleaned it and bandaged it. They were lucky. It could have been much worse. We need a better way to get water, Hyun said at the meeting that night. All 47 survivors gathered in the cargo bay for meetings every evening. It was important that everyone knew what was happening. The filter can clean water from anywhere, Junho said. But we need a lot of power to run it all day. The solar panels can't do it. What if we use the ship's backup reactor? Suggested a woman named Hana. She had been a mechanic before the crash. That reactor was damaged in the crash, Junho said. I looked at it. It's too dangerous to use. They argued for an hour. Taemin wanted to send armed groups to the stream. Yuna said that was stupid because they would eventually get tired and make mistakes. Day suggested collecting rainwater, but it hadn't rained since they arrived. Finally, Bora spoke up. What if we make the water come to us? Everyone looked at him. Pipes, Bora continued. We dig a trench from the stream to the ship. Put pipes in it. The water flows here instead of us going there. It was simple, so simple that Hyun wondered why none of them had thought of it sooner. Maybe because they were all thinking too hard about complicated solutions. They spent 3 days building the water line. It was exhausting work. The soil was hard and full of rocks. The gravity made everyone tired faster. But they got it done. Hunyo rigged a pump using parts from the ship. Now they had running water. Not bad for a bunch of people who don't know what they're doing, Minji said, watching clean water pour into a container. The food situation was harder to solve. Bora tried cooking different plants that Day collected. Most tasted terrible. Some made people sick. But Bora kept trying. Back home I learned to make kimchi from my grandmother, Bora said. She taught me that fermentation can change food. Make bad things good. Maybe it works here too. Day got excited about this. He and Bora worked together, testing different plants with different fermentation methods. Most experiments failed, but some showed promise. There was a mushroom-like growth that turned sweet after sitting in salt water for a week. A purple root vegetable that became soft and edible after fermenting. It's not delicious, Bora admitted, letting Hyun taste a piece of fermented root, but it won't kill you. That's something. Hyun chewed the root. It tasted like sour cardboard, but Bora was right. It was food. It was a chance to survive longer than 3 months. By the end of the second week, they had a routine. People took shifts watching for glassbacks. Others worked on improving the camp. Day and Bora experimented with food. Minji treated injuries and illnesses. Hunyo fixed things that broke. Yuna trained people on how to spot danger. And Hyun tried to keep everyone working together. It was harder than running a store. At the store, people did their jobs and went home. Here everyone was tired and scared and sometimes angry. Arguments happened every day. Taemin still insisted they should just wait for rescue. A ship will come, he said. The company knows our route. They'll find us. What if they don't? Hyun asked. What if it takes years? We need to be ready to live here. You're giving up, Taemin accused. I'm being realistic, Hyun shot back. They didn't agree, but they didn't fight either. Taemin kept to his group of supporters who believed rescue was coming soon. Hyun worked with everyone else to build something more permanent. On the 14th night, Hyun couldn't sleep. He walked to the edge of the cargo bay and looked out at the glowing forest. The blue light was beautiful in a strange way. The purple sky was full of stars he didn't recognize. Minji found him there. She stood next to him without saying anything for a while. "Do you think we'll make it?" she asked finally. Hyun thought about lying, saying something hopeful and positive. But Minji deserved the truth. "I don't know," he said, "but we're still alive. 2 weeks ago I thought we'd all be dead by now, so maybe we're doing okay." "You're a terrible motivational speaker," Minji laughed. "I know," Hyun smiled, "but I'm honest." They stood together watching the alien world. Somewhere in the forest, a glassback made its clicking call. Another answered from far away. The sound didn't scare Hyun as much anymore. It was just part of this new life. Tomorrow they would keep working, keep learning, keep surviving. That was all they could do, and somehow it felt like enough. It was Yuna who first saw them. She was on watch duty near the north side of the ship when movement caught her eye. At first she thought it was another glassback. Then she realized these creatures were walking on 2 legs. "Hyun," Yuna called out quietly. "You need to see this." Hyun came running with Dae and Junho close behind. They crouched near the window and looked where Yuna was pointing. In the blue glow of the forest, they could see 3 figures. They were tall, maybe 7 feet high, with bodies that looked like insects. Their skin seemed to change colors as they moved, shifting from green to purple to orange. "Are those people?" Junho whispered. "Intelligent life," Dae breathed. His eyes were wide with excitement and fear. "We're not alone here." The insect creatures were examining something on the ground. One of them touched a piece of debris from the crash. Its skin flashed bright red. The other 2 backed away quickly. "I think that was a warning," Yuna said. "The red color. It means danger or anger." They watched for another hour. The creatures moved in strange, jerking motions. They would stop. Their skin would change colors, then they would move again. It looked almost like they were talking to each other with their colors. "We should try to make contact," Dae said. "Are you crazy?" Temin had joined them at the window. "Those things could be dangerous." "Or they could help us," Hyun said slowly. "If they're intelligent, maybe we can communicate. Trade with them." "Trade what?" Temin asked. "We barely have enough for ourselves." "Knowledge," Dae said. "Technology. We have things they might not have. And they know how to survive on this planet. That's worth more than food right now." The debate went on for 2 days. Some people agreed with Hyun and Dae. Others sided with Taemin, who thought they should avoid the natives completely. Minji was in the middle. She saw both sides. "If they're intelligent, they might see us as invaders," Minji pointed out. "We crashed on their world. We're using their resources. They might want us gone." She was right, but Hyun knew they couldn't hide forever. The natives had definitely noticed the crash. Sooner or later, contact would happen whether they wanted it or not. Better to do it on their terms. Dae spent days watching the natives through a scope he made from ship parts. He took notes on everything. The color changes, their movements, where they went and when. "I think the colors are communication," Dae explained at a meeting. "Watch this." He showed them drawings. When one turns blue-green, the others come closer. When one flashes red, they move away. Yellow seems to mean curiosity. Purple might be greeting. "How can you be sure?" Taemin challenged. "I can't," Dae admitted. "But it's the best theory I have. Language isn't just words. It's patterns. And these creatures have patterns." Yuna helped create a plan. "We go out in the day when the glassbacks sleep. We bring no weapons. We try to show we're not dangerous." "That's how you get killed," Taemin said. "Maybe," Hyun agreed. "But we have to try." They chose 5 people for first contact. Hyun because he was the closest thing to a leader they had. Dae because he understood the natives best. Yuna because she was good at reading behavior. Bor because he was calm under pressure. And Minji because if someone got hurt, they would need her. On the morning they chose, the 5 of them walked out of the ship. They moved slowly toward an area where Dae had seen the natives gathering. It was a clearing about 200 meters from the ship where several large rocks formed a circle. Hyun's heart was beating so hard he could hear it in his ears. Every step felt wrong. They were so exposed. If the natives attacked, they had no chance. They reached the clearing and waited. The sun was hot here, hotter than Earth's sun. Sweat ran down Hyun's back. Beside him, Minji was breathing fast. Dae kept looking around, excited and terrified at the same time. An hour passed, then 2. Hyun was starting to think this was a mistake when Yuna grabbed his arm. "There," she whispered. The natives came from 3 directions. There were at least 20 of them. They moved in that strange jerking way, stopping and starting. Their skin colors flashed rapidly. mostly red and orange. Angry colors, the largest native stepped forward. It was even taller than the others, maybe 8 feet high. Its body was armored with plates that looked like black glass. When it turned its head to look at them, Hyun saw multiple eyes arranged in a pattern like a flower. The native's skin flashed bright red. All the other natives responded with red. It felt like standing in front of an angry mob. Day, Hyun said quietly. Any ideas? T stepped forward slowly. He held up his hands to show they were empty. Then, feeling a bit stupid, he tried to copy what he had seen. He imagined his skin turning blue-green like when the natives wanted to come closer. Of course, his skin stayed the same human color. But he kept trying, using his hands to make gestures. Blue-green for friendly, yellow for curious. He pointed at himself and then at them, trying to show they wanted to understand. The large native tilted its head. Its skin color shifted from red to orange to yellow. The other natives watched. Some of them changed to yellow too, curious maybe. Bora had an idea. He pulled out a small piece of food from his pocket. It was one of the ration bars. He took a bite himself, showed he was okay, then offered the rest toward the native. The native approached slowly. It reached out with a hand that had too many fingers. It took the bar and examined it. Then, to everyone's surprise, it bit into it. The native's skin flashed through a dozen colors so fast Hyun couldn't track them all. It dropped the bar and stumbled backward. All the other natives turned red again and started making clicking sounds. Not like the glassbacks, though. These were faster, more complex. I think we poisoned it, Minji said, her voice tight with panic. But the native wasn't dying. It was doing something else. It touched the ground and its skin turned deep purple. Suddenly, the soil around them started to glow. Plants grew up from the ground impossibly fast, bright green and silver. The native picked one and ate it. Its skin returned to yellow. It just healed itself, Day whispered, using plants, growing them from nothing. The native looked at them for a long time. Then it did something that made Hyun's breath catch. It pressed its hand against the ground again. More plants grew up, but these were different. Red and blue flowers that gave off a sweet smell. The native picked several and offered them to Day. Day took them carefully. I think this is a gift, he said. Or maybe medicine. Something to help us. The native's skin flashed yellow-green. Its head bobbed in a motion that might have been a nod. Then it turned and walked away. The other natives followed, but slower. Some of them kept looking back, their skin colors shifting between yellow and orange. When they were alone again, the 5 humans just stood there for a moment. Did that just happen? Bor asked. We made contact, Yuna said. She was smiling. Actual first contact with an alien species. And nobody died. They hurried back to the ship. Everyone crowded around as Day examined the flowers the native had given them. Using his makeshift lab, he tested them carefully. This is incredible, Day said. These plants have compounds that could neutralize the toxins in the native food. They knew we couldn't eat their food, so they gave us something to help. Why would they help us? Taemin asked suspiciously. Maybe they're just curious, Minji suggested. We're something new, different. Or maybe, Hyun said slowly, they're deciding if we're worth keeping alive. That night, a native came to the ship. It was smaller than the others, its skin mostly purple and green. It stayed at a distance, watching them through the windows. Yuna watched it back, trying to understand what it wanted. The native stayed all night. When morning came, it was still there. This time it came closer. It left something near the ship entrance, then walked away. It was a small device made of living material like carved wood, but it pulsed with light. Junho examined it carefully. It's some kind of tool, he said. But it's alive, or partly alive. It's warm and it's growing. Over the next few days, the small native came back repeatedly. It brought more items, strange fruits that Day tested and found safe to eat, a substance that worked like glue but was made from plant sap. Each time, the native's colors seemed friendlier, more yellow and green, less red and orange. But there was a problem. Day discovered it while exploring near the crash site. They have markers, Day explained, showing them carved stones covered in colorful patterns. Territorial boundaries. And we crashed right in the middle of them. This is their sacred ground or territory or something important. We're not welcome here. What do we do? Hyun asked. I don't know, Day admitted, but I saw more of them gathering in the forest. A lot more. I think they're preparing for something. That night, Hyun couldn't sleep again. He thought about the natives, about how they had shown kindness with the flowers and the gifts. but also how they had flashed red with anger when they first met. The natives were patient, but they wouldn't be patient forever. The small native was outside again, watching the ship. Hyun watched back. Through the window across the alien landscape, two very different beings looked at each other, both wondering the same thing. Could they find a way to live together? Or would one of them have to leave? The breakthrough came from Junho and his broken machine. One of the native devices had stopped working. The small native who visited regularly looked distressed when it saw the dead tool. Its skin flashed rapid patterns of brown and gray that Day said probably meant sadness or loss. Junho asked if he could look at it. The native was hesitant, its colors shifting nervously. But finally it handed the device over. "It's incredible," Junho said, turning the organic tool in his hands. "It's grown to do a specific task, but it needs some kind of energy to work. Like a battery, but biological." He spent 3 hours taking it apart and putting it back together. He added a small solar cell from the ship's spare parts. He connected wires in a way that let the electrical energy flow into the living tissue. When he activated it, the device glowed brighter than before. The small native's skin exploded into colors. Bright yellows and greens, and even some colors that hurt to look at. It grabbed the device and ran off into the forest. Hyun thought that was the end of it. But the next morning, there were 50 natives outside the ship. The small one stood in front with the repaired device held high. Behind it, the tall leader from before stepped forward. This time its colors weren't angry. They were yellow-green with streaks of bright blue. Day went out to meet them with Hyun, Junho, and Yuna. The tall native did something then that changed everything. It pressed both hands to its chest, then extended them toward Junho. Its skin turned a beautiful mixture of purple and gold. "I think that's respect," Day whispered. "Or gratitude. You did something they couldn't do." More natives came forward. They brought devices that had stopped working. Lights that had dimmed. Tools that no longer grew properly. They laid them at Junho's feet and waited. "They want me to fix them?" Funyo asked, his voice shaking. "I think they want to trade," Hyun said. "They teach us their skills. We teach them ours." It started slowly. Funyo showed 3 natives how to use electrical current. The natives showed him how to grow living tools from special seeds. Bora taught them about fermentation and cooking with heat. They taught him how to cultivate plants that grew in hours instead of weeks. Minji learned their healing methods. The natives could manipulate plant life to create medicines. They showed her how certain flowers could close wounds and how tree sap could fight infections. In return, she taught them about human anatomy and how to treat injuries without using plants. The real surprise was Day. He spent days with the native scientists, learning their color language properly. He discovered their name for themselves, Veloth. He learned that they were fascinated by human cooperation. "They don't understand us," Day explained one evening. "The Veloth live in hive groups, family groups. They trust only their own hive. But we're all strangers working together. To them, that's impossible. They want to understand how we do it." "We don't have a choice," Taman muttered. He had been quiet lately. His group of followers had shrunk as more people got involved with the Veloth. "Maybe that's the secret," Minji said. "We work together because we have to. Maybe that makes us stronger." 3 months after the crash, they had built something new. The cargo bay was now filled with hybrid technology. Lights that were half electrical, half biological. Water filters that used both human engineering and Veloth plant manipulation. Food that combined Bora's cooking with Veloth growing techniques. The small Veloth, who had first befriended them, spent most of its time with Yuna now. She had learned to read its color patterns better than anyone. She called it Nim, which wasn't its real name but was easier to say. Nim and Yuna were on watch duty together when they saw something that made them both afraid. In the sky, moving fast, were lights that weren't stars. Ships. Big ones. Yuna ran to get Hyun. By the time he arrived with Day and others, the Veloth leader was already there with 20 warriors. Its skin was flashing urgent red and orange. Day watched the colors carefully. "It's saying danger, enemy, death," he paused. "I think there's a word for these ships, the Kresh. It keeps making the same pattern." Nim's skin went completely black, something they had never seen before. It made rapid gestures toward the sky, then toward the ground, then made a sweeping motion that seemed to mean everything would be destroyed. "The Kresh are bad news," Yuna said. "Really bad." Over the next day, they learned the truth. The Kresh came to planets and took everything. Minerals, water, organic material. They stripped worlds bare. The Veloth had encountered them before on other planets. They had always run away because fighting never worked. But they can't run this time, Day explained. This is their home world. Where else would they go? Hyun called a meeting. All 47 humans and 12 Veloth gathered in and around the cargo bay. The Veloth had to stand outside because they were too tall to fit inside easily. The Kresh ships will arrive in 5 days, Hyun said. The Veloth say they'll demand we leave or they'll kill us all. They've done this before on other worlds. They don't negotiate. Then we leave, Taemin said immediately. We take what we can carry and hide in the forest. And then what? Yuna challenged. Hide forever? The Kresh will strip this planet. Everything we've built will be destroyed. What can we do? Asked a woman named Sora. We're 47 people with barely any weapons. They're a spacefaring civilization with big ships. 47 humans, Bora corrected. And about 3,000 Veloth if the scouts are right. We're not alone. The Veloth leader made a complex pattern of colors. Day translated. It says the Veloth have tried fighting before. They lose every time. The Kresh have better weapons, better armor. The Veloth only know ritual combat, territory displays, not real war. An idea formed in Hyun's mind, a crazy, desperate idea. But we know war, he said slowly. Humans have fought wars for thousands of years. We know tactics, strategy. We know how to fight when we're outmatched. We're store clerks and students, Taemin said. What do we know about war? More than you think, Yuna said. Her eyes were bright. I've played 1,000 strategy games. I know flanking, ambushes, how to use terrain. It's not the same as real war, but it's something. I watched a lot of historical documentaries, Day added. I remember things. Tactics from Earth wars, combined with Veloth abilities. You're all crazy, Taemin said, but he didn't sound as sure as before. They spent 3 days planning. Yuna worked with the Veloth warriors, teaching them human concepts of warfare. Flanking, feints, retreat, and ambush. The Veloth were confused at first. Why pretend to run away? Why attack from the side instead of the front? But they learned. And they taught the humans too. How to use the forest. How to make plants grow as barriers. How to use colors to communicate silently across distances. Junho and the Veloth engineers created weapons. Not guns, they didn't have those. But they made something new. Devices that could generate electromagnetic pulses. They were alive, grown from seeds, but powered by human electrical knowledge. When activated, they could shut down electronic systems. Will they work? Hyun asked. I have no idea, Junho admitted. We've never tested them on Kresh technology. But the theory is sound. Bora worked on a different weapon. Using his fermentation knowledge and Veloth plant manipulation, he created something that could paralyze. A gas that was harmless to humans and Veloth but would shut down other nervous systems. Maybe, possibly, if they were lucky. Minji set up field hospitals in 3 locations. She trained Veloth healers and human volunteers on trauma care. She knew there would be injuries. Deaths too. She tried not to think about it. Day worked with the Veloth leader, creating a shared language of color and gesture and simple words. They needed to coordinate. Humans and Veloth fighting together as one force. On the 4th day, Hyun found himself standing with Day, looking at maps they had drawn of the area. The Veloth leader stood with them, its colors calm blues and greens now. We can't win a direct fight, Hyun said, so we don't fight directly. We make them come to us, use the terrain. Make every step cost them something. The Veloth leader's colors shifted. Day nodded. It agrees. And it says something else. It says that win or lose, the Veloth are grateful. We showed them something new. That strangers can become allies. That night, Taemin found Hyun sitting alone. I was wrong, Taemin said quietly, about waiting for rescue, about not working with the Veloth. I was wrong about a lot of things. You were scared, Hyun said. We all were. Still are. Are we going to die tomorrow? Taemin asked. Hyun thought about lying, about giving false hope, but he had promised himself to always be honest. Maybe, Hyun said. Probably. But if we do, at least we tried. At least we fought back. Taemin sat down next to him. I never thought I'd die on an alien planet fighting alongside giant insects. Life is strange, Hyun laughed. It felt good to laugh. Life is very strange. They sat together watching the stars. Somewhere up there the Kresh ships were coming. Tomorrow would bring fire and fear and probably death. But tonight they had friends. Human and Veloth, all preparing together, all hoping together. The small Veloth Nim came and sat with them. Its colors were soft and peaceful. In the distance, they could hear humans and Veloth working together, building defenses, preparing weapons, getting ready for the impossible. We're really doing this, Taman said. We really are, Hyun agreed. And somehow, impossibly, he felt ready. The Kresh arrived at dawn. Their ships were massive and dark against the purple sky. They didn't land gently. They came down hard, crushing trees and making the ground shake. 5 ships in total, arranged in a perfect circle around the crash site. From the lead ship, a voice boomed out in several languages. Finally, it spoke in something close to Korean, but wrong. Computer translated. Inhabitants of this world, you are in violation of Kresh expansion protocol. You have 2 options. Evacuate this planet within 1 solar cycle or be eliminated. Choose now. Hyun stood with Yuna, Dae, and the Veloth leader on a hill overlooking the ships. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady when he spoke into the radio they had prepared. This world is not yours to take. The people here will defend it. There was a long silence. Then laughter. The voice spoke again. 50 primitives and some insects. You will be eliminated. Your resistance is recorded and will be mocked. The radio went dead. The Kresh were done talking. Yuna checked her watch. Phase 1 in 30 seconds, she said. Her face was pale but focused. She had planned this. Now she had to trust that it would work. The Kresh ships opened. Ramps descended. Soldiers marched out in perfect formation. They were humanoid, 4 arms each covered in armor that shimmered like oil on water. They carried weapons that hummed with power. There were at least 200 of them. The Kresh commander stepped forward. It was taller than the others, its armor marked with symbols. It raised one weapon and pointed it at the crashed human ship. Destroy it, the commander said. Leave nothing. That's when the ground exploded, not with bombs, with plants. Junho's hybrid devices had been buried in carefully mapped locations. When Yuna hit the trigger, they activated all at once. The Veloth seeds inside them received the electrical charge and grew impossibly fast. In seconds, trees erupted from the soil, their roots tangling around Kresh soldiers, vines wrapped around legs and arms. Thorns as long as fingers punched through the weak points in armor. The Kresh formation broke. Soldiers tried to cut themselves free, but more plants kept growing. The EMP devices hidden in the roots sent pulses through the Kresh weapons. Half of them shut down immediately. Now, Yuna shouted into her radio. From 3 sides, the Veloth warriors charged. But they didn't charge straight at the enemy like they had in their old ritual combats. They came from angles. They used the forest for cover. They threw Bora's paralysis gas bombs and scattered when the Kresh returned fire. The Kresh soldiers who had freed themselves from the plants tried to form defensive lines. But the Veloth would flash red to draw attention, then turn invisible green when the actual attack came from a different direction. The humans had taught them deception. The Veloth had perfected it. Hyun and Minji ran toward the first field hospital. They had casualties already. A Veloth warrior with its arm burned off. A human woman named Hay with a leg wound. Minji worked fast, her hand steady even though her voice shook when she gave orders. We can't keep this up long, Minji said while treating Hai. They're too strong, too many of them, she was right. The Kresh were regrouping. Their commander was organizing them properly now. They formed tight squads that watched all directions. They moved carefully, checking for traps. Phase 2 had to happen now. Taman led it. He had insisted on being part of the fight. His group of 30 humans and 50 Veloth ran toward the southern Kresh ship. They made a lot of noise, drew attention. The Kresh commander sent half its forces to intercept, but it was a diversion. While the Kresh focused on Taman's group, Junho and 20 Veloth engineers snuck to the eastern ship. They carried the most powerful EMP devices, the ones they weren't sure would even work. Junho's hands were shaking as he placed the devices against the ship's hull. A Veloth engineer beside him connected the living circuits. They had one shot at this. Ready? Junho whispered. The Veloth flashed green. Ready. Junho activated the device. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ship's lights flickered. Systems whined. The metal hull groaned. And then suddenly the entire ship went dark. Inside, they could hear the Kresh shouting in confusion. Emergency systems tried to activate, but the biological EMP was still pulsing. It was eating through their electronic systems like a virus. It worked, Junho breathed. It actually worked, but they weren't done. The other 4 ships were still active, and the Kresh on the ground were advancing on Taman's position. Taman and his group were pinned down behind a rock formation. The Kresh had better weapons and better armor. 3 humans were already dead. 5 Veloth were injured. They couldn't hold much longer. "Fall back," Taman shouted. "Everyone retreat!" But it wasn't a real retreat. It was another tactic Yuna had taught them. Draw the enemy in. Make them think they're winning. Then spring the trap. The Kresh chased them into a narrow valley. The walls were steep and covered in the glowing blue plants. The Kresh commander followed confidently. These primitives were running. The battle was over. Then Bora triggered the valley trap. The plants on the walls weren't just plants. They were bombs. Organic explosives that the Veloth had cultivated for generations, but never knew how to use as weapons. Bora had taught them. The explosions weren't big, but they were enough. Rocks fell. Debris rained down. The valley became a killing zone. Most of the Kresh soldiers made it out, but they were wounded and scared now. They had never faced an enemy like this before. The Kresh commander was furious. It screamed orders, and the remaining 3 active ships powered up their main weapons, massive cannons that could level the entire forest. "They're going to bombard us from orbit," Day said, watching through a scope. "We can't stop that." But Yuna had one more plan. The riskiest one. She looked at Hyun. "We need to get on those ships. Shut them down from inside." "That's suicide," Hyun said. "Maybe," Yuna agreed, "but it's the only way." Nim, the small Veloth who had befriended them, volunteered immediately. Its colors were determined, brave. 20 Veloth warriors and 10 humans joined them, including Hyun. "I have to go," Hyun said when Minji tried to stop him. "If this doesn't work, we all die anyway. At least this way I'm doing something." They approached the northern ship using a tunnel the Veloth had dug. It came up right under the ship's belly. Yunyo had studied the crashed human ship enough to guess where the access panels might be on the Kresh vessels. He was right. They found a maintenance hatch. The Veloth used their plant manipulation to corrode the locks. The hatch opened. Inside, the ship was chaos. The crew had seen what happened to the eastern ship. They were running diagnostics, trying to figure out how to prevent the same thing. They didn't expect enemies to be inside already. Nim led the charge. Its skin flashed rapid attack patterns. The Veloth warriors moved like water through the corridors. The humans followed, armed with makeshift weapons and pure desperate courage. They fought through 3 decks, lost 2 humans and 4 Veloth, finally reached the engine room. Junyo started setting up the EMP devices while the others held the door. A Kresh soldier broke through. It was massive and armed with a blade in each of its 4 hands. It cut down a Veloth warrior and advanced on Junho. Hyun stepped between them. He had a piece of pipe. The Kresh had a sword. It wasn't a fair fight, but Hyun didn't fight fair. He threw dust in the Kresh's face.
Kicked its knee.
When it stumbled, he hit it as hard as he could. The pipe bent. The Kresh fell. "Done," Yunyo shouted. "Everyone out now," they ran. Behind them, the EMP device activated. The ship's system screamed and died. The lights went out. The ship began to fall. They barely made it out before the ship hit the ground. The crash was enormous. Shrapnel flew everywhere. Hyun felt something hit his shoulder and pain exploded through his arm. Minji found him 20 minutes later. He was lying in the grass with Nim beside him. The small Veloth had dragged him away from the burning ship. "You're an idiot," Minji said, but her eyes were wet as she bandaged his shoulder. "Did we win?" Hyun asked. 2 ships down," Minji said. 3 still active. But the Kresh commander is calling for withdrawal. They've never taken casualties like this. They're scared. The Kresh did withdraw. Not all the way off the planet, but back to their remaining ships. They sent one final message. "This planet is marked as hostile. It is not worth the cost. We will return with greater force." But they didn't return that day, or the next, or the week after. A month later, a different ship arrived. This one broadcast friendly signals. It was a human rescue vessel. They had finally traced the crashed transport. The crew was shocked by what they found. Humans and Veloth living together, a hybrid settlement with technology that combined both species' knowledge, and a crater where a Kresh invasion force had been turned back by store clerks and teachers and students. The rescue captain offered to take the survivors home, back to Earth, back to their old lives. Some said yes. About 15 people wanted to go home. Hyun didn't blame them. They had been through hell, but 32 humans chose to stay. including Hyun, Minji, Dae, Yuna, Junho, Bora, and even Taemin. Why stay? The captain asked Hyun. You survived. You can go home now. Hyun looked around at the settlement they had built. Humans and Veloth working together, children from both species learning from each other. He saw Nim teaching a human child how to grow plants. He saw Junho and Veloth engineers building something new. This is home now, Hyun said simply, and we're not done yet.